Introduction. The choice most people never make. There is a choice that most people spend their lives circling without ever quite making. It is not the choice between two paths, two jobs, two relationships. It is older and quieter than any of those. It is the choice to be on your own side, to operate from the conviction that your life, this specific life, yours, the one you are actually living, is worth choosing. Worth investing in. Worth building deliberately rather than waiting for it to be assigned to you by the accumulated drift of circumstances and other people's expectations. The choice to choose yourself. This sounds simple. It is, in fact, one of the rarer things. Most people are very good at choosing others, at meeting expectations, filling roles, responding to what is needed and wanted from them. The external choosing comes naturally, or is at least practiced enough to feel natural. The internal choosing, the decision to treat your own life as a genuine project, worthy of the same energy and intention you bring to other people's priorities, is harder. It requires the conviction that you are worth it, which is a conviction that many people hold in theory but find difficult to act on consistently. This book is about what choosing yourself actually means, not as a withdrawal from responsibility or care for others, but as the foundational act of building a life that is actually yours. It is about the specific choices that compose the larger choice. The choice of work, of direction, of standards, of relationships, of how you spend the ordinary days. And it is about why making these choices deliberately, in alignment with what you actually value, produces a fundamentally different life than letting them accumulate by default. Choose yourself. Everything else follows from there. Chapter 1. What it means to stop living someone else's life. Choosing yourself is not selfishness. This is the first clarification, because the idea is prone to a misreading that undermines it. Selfishness is the prioritization of your interests at the expense of others, the willingness to harm, neglect, or take advantage of people in service of what you want. Choosing yourself is something categorically different. It is the decision to build a life that is genuinely yours, rather than one assembled entirely from the roles and expectations placed on you by others. The distinction matters because the opposite of choosing yourself is not generosity. It is self-abandonment, and self-abandonment is not good for the people around you, however much it may appear to serve them in the short term. The person who has systematically deprioritized their own life in favor of everyone else's needs produces a specific kind of depleted presence. The martyr energy that fills the room with obligation, that gives but keeps a ledger, that shows up while quietly resenting the showing up. This is not the generosity it mimics. It is the consequence of never having made the central choice. Choosing yourself means knowing what you actually value and allowing that to guide your decisions. Doing work that means something to you, not just work that satisfies others' expectations of you. Investing in your own development, health, and well-being as a genuine priority rather than an afterthought. Building relationships from a place of choice rather than fear of what happens if you do not. Setting and maintaining the boundaries that allow you to give from abundance rather than depletion. None of these require neglecting others. They require having a self from which to give. The choice of yourself is what makes everything else you give sustainable, genuine, and actually useful. You cannot give what you have not built. Chapter 2. The cost of not choosing. The cost of not choosing yourself is paid every day, in small enough increments that the total is rarely visible until it has accumulated for years. It looks like this. The morning you arrive at work already tired, not from the day ahead but from the accumulated weight of a trajectory you did not choose. The Sunday that arrives with a heaviness that has nothing to do with Monday specifically and everything to do with the gap between the life you are living and the one you know, in some quiet part of yourself, you are capable of. The relationship you maintain past its real ending because the cost of changing it seems higher than the cost of staying. The capability you carry but have never developed, because developing it felt indulgent relative to the demands already in place. These costs are real. They accumulate into what might be called a small life, not small in the sense of modest or quiet, but small in the sense of significantly less than what was possible. A life shaped primarily by what was expected and available rather than by what was genuinely wanted and intended. The reason this accumulation is so common is that the daily cost of not choosing yourself is low. Any given day of default is not painful enough to force a change. The discomfort is manageable. The rationalization is available. This is not permanent. things will change, the right moment to build the life I actually want is coming. And so the days pass, each one adding to the total, while the total stays invisible. The moment of reckoning, when it arrives, is usually not a dramatic crisis. It is usually just a moment of clarity, often in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, or looking in the mirror before work, or lying awake at 2 in the morning with nothing specific wrong. The moment when the accumulated cost of the unchosen life suddenly becomes briefly, painfully visible. The good news is that this moment of clarity, uncomfortable as it is also the opening. The choosing is still available. The only question is whether the clarity produces action or whether it is managed back into the quiet corner where it has been living. Chapter 3. Choosing your work. The most significant daily context in which most people either choose themselves or do not is their work. Work is where a significant portion of your waking hours go, where a significant portion of your energy, attention, and capability is invested. The question of whether that investment is directed toward something that means something to you, or primarily toward fulfilling a role that serves others' needs without much relationship to your own, is among the most consequential questions of a life. Choosing your work does not mean finding the single perfect calling and pursuing it to the exclusion of all practical considerations. That is a romantic version of the idea that is not available to most people and not even desirable for many. It means something more attainable and more useful, aligning your work trajectory with your genuine interests, values, and capabilities over time, even if the perfect alignment is not achievable today. The key word is trajectory. Where you are today in your work may or may not reflect your choices, circumstances, timing, opportunity, and necessity all play real roles. But where you are heading can be a function of your choices, even if the journey is gradual. Choosing your work trajectory means asking, with genuine honesty, is the direction I am heading in one that I would choose if I believed I had a choice? If the answer is yes, the question is how to make the most of the path. If the answer is no, the question is what the smallest meaningful step toward the right direction looks like, today, from where you actually are. The people who are genuinely doing what they are meant to do did not arrive there by accident. They made choices, sometimes at significant cost, often in the face of uncertainty, to align their trajectory with their genuine interests. They treated the question of direction as a real question with a real answer, not as a luxury to consider after the practical things were settled. The practical things are never fully settled. The direction choices cannot wait for them. Chapter 4. Choosing your standards. When you choose yourself, you also choose the standards by which you operate, the level of quality, integrity, and consistency you hold yourself to, independent of what is required by the situation. Most people's standards are externally calibrated. They meet the expectations of their environment, the norms of their workplace, their social group, their profession. They do what is required and generally what is expected. This is not a character flaw. It is a natural consequence of living in social environments that are rich in external standards and lean on internal ones. But the externally calibrated person is at the mercy of the environments they inhabit. In a high standards environment, they perform at a high level. In a low standards environment, they drift downward. Their behavior is consistent with what is expected, not with what they have chosen. The internally calibrated person has made a different choice. They have decided what standard they hold themselves to, and they hold it regardless of what the environment requires. They bring quality to work that no one will notice being done at a lower quality. They maintain their integrity in contexts where cutting corners would be invisible. They keep commitments that no one is tracking but them. This internal calibration is the foundation of a particular kind of self-respect. Not the self-respect that comes from others' approval. That is social standing, not self-respect. The self-respect that comes from the private knowledge of how you have conducted yourself. The sense that when you look back at a day, a week, a year, you can say honestly that you operated at the standard you chose. Choosing your standards also means choosing what you will not compromise on. The values that are not negotiable regardless of what is offered in exchange. The behaviors you will not engage in regardless of the pressure or the rationalization available. These are not rules imposed from outside. They are the choices of a person who has decided what kind of person they are and is committed to being consistent with that decision. Chapter 5. Choosing your relationships. Every relationship in your life is either chosen or inherited. The ones you chose, or chose to maintain, are a reflection of what you value and who you believe you deserve. That last part is where the complication lives. The relationships you tolerate, the company you keep out of habit or obligation, or because you have not yet made the decision to change it. These are not primarily a function of your values. They are a function of what you believe, at some level, you deserve. The person who chronically tolerates relationships that diminish them, drain them, or require them to be smaller than they are has not simply made a practical choice about what is available. They have made, at some level, a statement about what they believe they are worth. Choosing yourself in relationships means updating that statement. This is not about surrounding yourself with people who agree with you or reflect your best image back to you. Those are not relationships, they are mirrors. The relationships worth building include honesty, challenge, real difference, and the discomfort of genuine contact with another person's real perspective. But they also include, at their foundation, mutual respect and care. The basic conviction on both sides that the other person's well-being matters. That the relationship is worth the investment it requires. That both people are better in some genuine way for the other's presence. Auditing your relationships is uncomfortable, but it is one of the most consequential exercises in choosing yourself. Who are the people who consistently leave you more alive, more clear, more capable? Who are the people who consistently leave you depleted, smaller, or confused about who you are? The first group deserves more investment. The second group invites a harder question about what is keeping the relationship in place and whether that reason is strong enough. You become who you spend time with. Choose accordingly. Chapter 6. The Daily Choosing. The big choice, to choose yourself, is made in the large moments. But it is sustained or undermined in the small ones. The daily practice of choosing yourself is a series of small decisions that collectively determine whether the large choice is real or aspirational. Whether it is something you said you were doing or something you are actually doing. The small decisions look like choosing to begin the day from a place of intention rather than reaction. Choosing to do the thing you said you would do when the shortcut is available. Choosing to say the honest thing when the comfortable thing would serve the moment better. Choosing to invest time in the work, relationship, or practice that matters most to you when something less important is pressing for your attention. These small decisions are not dramatic. They do not feel like the expressions of a large life choice. They feel like minor daily judgments about how to spend the next hour. But across a year, across a decade, they are the substance of the choice. The person who has been making the small choosing decisions consistently is living a fundamentally different life than the person who has been deferring them. The daily choosing is also where the most common failures of the larger choice occur. Not in the dramatic moments of temptation or pressure, those tend to arrive clearly enough that the stakes are visible. But in the quiet moment when the habitual path of least resistance is right there, immediately available, and nothing in particular is forcing a different choice. The daily choosing is choosing when you do not have to. That is the whole of it, and it is everything. Chapter 7. When choosing yourself is hardest. There are circumstances that make choosing yourself genuinely difficult, not as an excuse not to, but as an honest acknowledgement that the choice requires different things in different contexts. The hardest circumstances tend to cluster around several themes. When other people's needs are acute and pressing. When someone you love is in genuine difficulty, the weight of their need can make any investment in your own direction feel selfish or ill-timed. This is among the most common reasons the choosing gets perpetually deferred. The response is not to choose yourself instead of caring for others, but to recognize that you can do both, and that the care you give from a chosen life is different from the care you give from an unchosen one. When the cost of choosing is high and visible. When choosing yourself requires changing something that involves real loss, leaving a job, ending a relationship, disappointing people you care about, the cost is obvious and present while the benefit is uncertain and future. The weight of the visible cost against the invisible benefit keeps many people in situations past the point that genuine choosing would have changed them. When you do not trust yourself, the choice to invest in your own direction requires some degree of confidence in your own judgment, some sense that what you want and value is a reliable enough guide to be worth building toward. When that confidence is low, the default to external expectations can feel not like a failure of choosing but like prudence. This is the most insidious version of not choosing. Addressing it requires the gradual accumulation of evidence that your own judgment can be trusted, which usually requires beginning to act on it in low-stakes situations and building from there. In all of these circumstances, the way through is not waiting for the choosing to become easy. It is finding the smallest version of the choice that is available in the current context and making that one. Not the perfect, all-in version of choosing yourself. The available version, today, from here. Chapter 8. The life that follows. When the choice to choose yourself is made and maintained over time, the life that follows is genuinely different. Not necessarily louder or more dramatic. Not necessarily more impressive by external measures, though often more productive because it is more aligned. But different in a quality that is harder to name than to recognize. The quality of feeling like yours. The sense that the life you are living is the one you actually chose. That the work you are doing reflects what you actually care about. That the people you have around you are people you have genuinely chosen. That the standards you hold yourself to are your own, not borrowed from whoever happened to be watching. That the direction you are heading is one you have set, with some genuine knowledge of what you are pointing toward and why. This quality, call it alignment, call it integrity, call it the experience of your life actually belonging to you, is available in pieces from the beginning. You do not have to wait for the full version before the partial version becomes meaningful. Every small choosing decision moves the experience in this direction. Every day in which you operated a little more from your own values and a little less from the accumulated defaults is a day in which the life was a little more yours. The accumulation of those days, across years, becomes a life that when you look back on it, you recognize as the one you built. Not the one that happened to you. Not the one that was assigned to you. Yours. Built by you, from your choices, toward what you actually valued. That is what choosing yourself is for. Conclusion. The choice is available now. The choice is always available. This is important, because one of the most effective ways of not making it is locating it in the future. When things settle, when the current obligations are met, when there is more freedom, more resources, more certainty about what the right direction is. The choice does not require the future to be different. It requires the present to be different. It does not require better circumstances. It requires a different relationship to the circumstances you already have. Not the passive relationship of someone being carried by events, but the active relationship of someone who has decided to direct their own life and is finding, in the circumstances they have, the available versions of that direction. You do not need permission. You do not need the ideal conditions. You do not need the validation of the people around you, though some of them may eventually give it. You need the choice, and the choice is available now. Choose yourself. The rest of the life follows from there. Key takeaways. Choosing yourself is not selfishness. Its opposite is not generosity but self-abandonment, and self-abandonment produces depletion, not genuine giving. You give better from a chosen life than from an unchosen one. The cost of not choosing yourself is paid daily in small increments. The total only becomes visible after it has been accumulating for years. Clarity, when it arrives, is an opening, not a verdict. Your work trajectory can be a function of your choices even when today's position is not. Treat the direction question as real and answerable, not as a luxury to revisit later. Choosing your standards means holding yourself to your own level of quality and integrity, independent of what the environment requires. Internal calibration produces a different kind of self-respect than externally calibrated performance. The relationships you tolerate reflect what you believe you deserve. Choosing yourself in relationships means investing in the ones that leave you more alive and honestly evaluating the ones that consistently leave you smaller. The daily choosing, small decisions made when you do not have to, is the substance of the large choice. The dramatic moments are less important than the consistent small ones. The hardest circumstances for choosing yourself are when others' needs are acute, when the cost is visible and the benefit is uncertain, and when you do not trust your own judgment. In all three cases, the path is the smallest available version of the choice, made today. The life that follows genuine choosing has a quality that is harder to name than to recognize. The sense that it is actually yours. Built by you, from your choices, toward what you actually valued. A note at the end. Somewhere in this book, a question arrived. Maybe it was quiet, barely above the noise of the day. Maybe it was louder, more insistent, the kind of question that has been waiting for a long time for a moment of stillness in which to be heard. The question, in one form or another, is, what would my life look like if I actually chose it? That question is worth sitting with, not rushing to answer, not dismissing with a quick summary of why the choosing is complicated. Sitting with it, letting it be genuinely open, trusting that something in you already knows the beginning of an answer. Because it does. You know more about what you actually want than you have been allowed to act on. And the permission to act on it, the only permission that finally matters, is yours to give. You have it.